It's September 1997. At the Dunbar armored facility in Los Angeles, stacks of millions are sitting idle, ready to be transported. Little did anyone know that the facility was about to be the victim of one of the largest and most meticulous heists in the US. But how did it happen? The facility was in an area where street crime was common, and it was prepared for such incidents with barbed wires all around it and a 24-hour surveillance system. However, it was no big deal for Alan Pace III. This is the rare case when an inside job led to the largest cash robbery in US history. Alan Pace was a friendly guy who worked as a regional safety inspector at the Dunbar facility. He was known for carrying out pranks on his colleagues and was determined to do his job, showcasing himself as the perfect guy to gain everyone's trust. But all this was to hide his true intentions: sack the Dunbar facility. For this sole reason, Alan had been gaining everyone's trust and was doing one of the most important jobs anyone could get at a place that isn't a bank, but the place that supplies the banks, to keep the cash in the vault safe. But the irony that the one charged with safeguarding it would be the one to steal it tells us much more about trusting people in today's world. But Alan's job was more than just to keep the cash safe. He was responsible for keeping the whole facility safe by checking every security measure. Part of his job was to even check for blind spots in the security cameras. For this, Alan used to observe how long the rotating cameras would stay on a specific field of view. He even took photographs of the inside of the facility without raising suspicions, because people thought Alan was just doing his job. But the real jackpot he had was access to the employee schedules, cash handling procedures, and security protocols. Such authority was a literal blessing, and made the execution of Alan's plans easier than ever. However, things were about to get messy for Alan. While trying to pull a prank, as he does, Alan was fired after being accused of tampering with one of the U-Haul vehicles after he removed its headlights and was ordered to return the keys the very next day. For months now, Alan, along with his childhood friends, Eugene Hill, Eric Boyd, Freddie McCreary Jr., Terry Brown, and Thomas Johnson, were planning the perfect hit on one of the most secure facilities to change the history of heists in America. That key was the only way to enter the facility unnoticed, making Alan's whole plan dependent on it. But with him fired, all plans had been compromised, and they only had the night of the 12th of September. Luckily, it was Friday. Alan was aware that the stacks of cash were about to be transported to the ATMs throughout the city. The heist heavily relied on Alan's employment with the facility that granted him access to restricted areas. It was now or never. September 13th, 1997. Alan Pace and his crew are at a Long Beach house party. From there, these individuals slip out one by one unnoticed and initiate the execution of one of America's greatest heists. The plan? 2 of the 6 people would get in a different car that they would park a few blocks away from the facility, and from there they would get into a U-Haul truck Eugene had rented. With Alan's keys, they would quietly enter the facility, evade the security cameras, and make their moves meticulously, keeping time for every camera to get them in their line of sight, in note. Since it would be midnight, Alan knew there would only be a couple of guards and a handful of employees. To evade the guards and get them by surprise, the meticulous insider knew when they would go on their breaks, while all the employees were preparing the money for the upcoming transportation. And so it happened. The crew took off to the facility. The adrenaline of pulling something so big and risky is indescribable, but one thing was sure: their months-long planning would not have been in vain. They entered the facility unnoticed in the rented U-Haul truck and went for the first objective: find the guards, because if they noticed the crew, they would sound the alarm. But with sheer focus, Alan had observed their daily routine, and the crew waited for the guards to come one by one. So it happened. The crew caught the guards by surprise and made them hostages by duct taping their arms and ankles. They took the keys to the vault from one of the guards, and with this, the way to their fortune was clear and closer than ever. But one obstacle was still there. The 18-inch thick metal door separates the cash from Alan, but luck was on their side. Since the money needed to be transported that morning, the vault door was kept open for ease of use. Once the crew takes the employees as hostages, they go straight into the vault. The crew cut the ordinary locks and started to take the cash out. The money in the vault was sorted according to the number on their route. And Alan had memorized which routes used large denominations and non-sequential bills. He had his crew avoid the stacks of new cash with sequential serial numbers and grab the $20 stacks of bills that were meant to be transported to automatic teller machines around the city. As they filled the bags of cash onto the metal docks, they called Eugene to get the rented U-Haul truck to the loading dock. But while reversing the truck into the loading dock, Eugene hit the truck, causing one of its taillights to fall off. The remaining crew wheeled the money there and loaded up the truck. Now, with the money loaded, Alan only has two final tasks before leaving the facility once and for all. First, to steal the security tapes from the recording system in the security control room, and second, to run to a locked closet elsewhere in the facility to steal the backup security tapes out of the recording equipment that is in the locked cabinet. On their way out, the crew smashed the cameras to make it look like the robbers didn't get caught because they destroyed the surveillance. With this, Alan and his crew pulled off one of the most daring and groundbreaking heists in the history of the US, without a single gunshot being fired. The crew went to one of their houses, changing back into their party clothes, and went back to the house party in Long Beach and played it cool like they had never left the party. That party was the best cover-up one can have while committing such a thing. Within 2 hours of being outside Long Beach, they had achieved what they dreamt of. At this point, what normally thieves do is to be impatient and go on spending sprees. But Alan made sure they didn't make this mistake. This made them smarter than most. Alan gave each member $100,000 that they would use for quiet, discreet spending, while the rest of the cash would have to wait until the heat got off. The rest of the cash was packed into garbage bags and had been moved into a self-storage facility for safekeeping. Alan and all the others were about to enjoy their lives. While the crew had cleaned the vault and taken approximately $18.9 million with them, police tried their best to find any clue that could make up a trail that could be traced directly to the robbers. However, the crew was ultra careful and left no clues behind. The only piece of evidence that the authorities found was a broken taillight, but it only indicated that a U-Haul truck was used and no evidence could link it to the perpetrators. With no fingerprints or video evidence, the authorities were at a dead end. But seeing how meticulously the heist was planned, they had to come to one conclusion. It was an inside job. Someone with keen knowledge of the operations of the Dunbar armor facility had to be involved, especially since the robbers knew of the backup security tapes' existence and stole those too. Seeing such meticulous planning, a task force of around 15 investigators was formed under the codename Operation Dunrob. To confirm their suspicion and narrow down the list of suspects familiar with the facility's operation, authorities interviewed employees, hoping someone would know something. During the interview, one common question was asked to every employee. Which employee do you think could have committed this crime? Surprisingly, almost all of the answers pointed toward Alan Pace. But his record was clean, and he wasn't the one who rented the truck, making him innocent in the eyes of the law. Regardless, the authorities kept an eye on Alan, hoping he would make a blunder that could eventually give them a reason to nab him. But Alan was living a peaceful life at his mother's house and remained out of suspicion by avoiding making any flashy purchases. It turns out Alan didn't even have a bank account, which makes the trail on his financial records go cold, and the authorities had no reason to keep Alan on their notary list. Fast forward to 6 months since Alan and the crew had earned their fortune. Every once in a while, the Mastermind would cautiously parcel out the money to his crew. He had planned to invest his share in rental properties and retire to live off his investments. The perpetrators slowly began to buy flashy purchases for themselves that included cars and properties, and that too in cash. They even used straw buyers to buy at least 10 homes during public auctions, which were then rented out to families. But where they thought it was going smoothly, they had made a huge blunder unknowingly. As the spending went on, the robbers realized that they had accidentally stolen several bags of new money that had sequential serial numbers. This money could easily link them to the crime if someone with knowledge of banknotes would get their hands on that money. Alan decided to get rid of that money because it was better to destroy a major piece of evidence instead of try to keep it hidden for the rest of your life. He told the crew and persuaded them to destroy that pile of cash. Hearing how big of a loophole this was, everyone agreed, and some of the crew members went to one of their homes, which had a fireplace. They tried to burn the money in it, but US money is made somewhat anti-flammable, making burning a stack of cash much harder and time-consuming. With this task becoming too tedious, the group thought of another way to destroy the cash, and so they set off to Las Vegas, where they intended to play the slot machines to get rid of the money. Unfortunately, luck wasn't on their side in this task too. The crisp new money was jamming in the slot machines frequently, making this plan a flop. With no other option in sight, they ended up putting those new notes in a washing machine to make them usable and look less new. A clever and hilarious thing to do. But it worked perhaps, and the crew went on with their secret diligent spending again. However, Alan knew they couldn't do this for all their lives. If they continue to spend without having any formal or legal track of their earnings, they will eventually get suspected and busted. So Alan, like the meticulous planner he is, came up with an idea. It had been 2 years since the robbery took place, and everyone thought they had successfully evaded the authorities and got the heat off themselves. And this was the case, until Eugene Hill, Alan's best friend, made the mistake that would cost the whole crew their anonymity. Eugene intended to purchase a property, for which he hired a real estate broker. However, Eugene paid him in a stack of cash, which was still wrapped up in the original cash straps, and the broker noticed it. He was suspicious, and unlike many in his profession, decided to not let it get away and called the police instead of quietly taking the money. This might be because the broker knew if he used these notes and someone spotted the serial number, as he did, he could also get busted for being misunderstood as a member of the heist and would then spend the rest of his life in jail for a crime he didn't commit. The authorities, hearing the finding of this strong evidence, rushed to conduct an investigation. Soon they realized that based on the dates and handwriting of the straps, the cash is part of the money stolen from the Dunbar armor facility. The tables turned, and the investigation was about to become a cluster of major breakthroughs. The authorities, having Eugene as the only lead, delved into his financial records and subpoenaed countless U-Haul records. The investigation concluded Eugene rented a 14-foot U-Haul truck one day before the robbery and returned it a day later, making him the key perpetrator. Police had enough evidence to take Eugene into custody, and so they did. Upon arresting him, more cash in the original money straps was found in his possession. Knowing he was caught red-handed, Eugene decided to break faith and roll on everyone by quickly confessing in hopes of a lesser sentence. Eugene tells everything about the other 5, and all are apprehended within days and put on trial in the spring of 2001. Till the end, Alan denied being part of the robbery and claimed that he was being set up by his former friends as revenge for cheating with a friend's wife. In the end, 4 of the 6 members of Alan's crew pleaded guilty and were sentenced to federal prison for time served ranging from 7.5 to 10 years. The 5th robber, Eric Boyd, received 17.5 years of imprisonment, and the 6th was Alan Pace, the mastermind himself, who had to spend 24 years of his life behind bars. However, the crew didn't only have to serve sentences, but also pay the stolen $18.9 million back in full. However, authorities have only been able to account for $7 million taken in the heist, and that was because most of it was used to buy property, cars, and other items that were easy to track. Now the authorities have only assumptions about the rest of the money. It was estimated that several $100,000 were presumably either burned or gambled away in Las Vegas, and only suspicions from many other authorities are in the public that there is as much as $10 million still hidden somewhere. Till now, it hasn't been found, even with Alan Pace out of jail. As strange as it might sound, Alan Pace has been back in the community since his release on the 1st of October 2020. However, he and all the other crew members have kept a low profile, with no spotlight on their whereabouts. All we can do is wait and watch how Alan decides to play this game, and if he really is up for another run-in with the authorities again, or just wants to live the rest of his life peacefully. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to watch more content like this.